We're finally halfway into the 2024 season. The Guardians have an off day. We'll take a look at where they've been, where they're going, plus what trade chips they have in the farm system, and what could they bring back.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Justin Latta. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Playoffs are winding down. They're already wound down in a bunch of other sports. The sports are not stopping like we want them, or sporting like we want them to. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of you customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started with more sports fun. And we're going to get started with more fun today on the show. Some people were concerned. Jeff is on vacation. We'll be back this week, so you're stuck with me alone for a few more days. We're going to talk about which spots in the Guardians roster so far are we going to hold for the rest of the season. Which one should they upgrade? We'll talk about where they are at the halfway point, and we're also going to discuss which prospects are going to bring back the most trades and who is most likely to be traded today as well. We'll also talk about futures game participants, and we'll get into a mock draft from Baseball America as well. Before we get into all that good stuff, I am Justin Latta, one of your co-hosts. I've been here a little under 2 years now, and I've been covering Cleveland's minor league system all the way back since 2007. I was once the editor at Guardians Baseball Insider. You might know me there, and the News Herald, the Morning Journal. I'm also contributing as well, Prospects Live. And, of course, this is Locked On Guardians. We are your, as far as I know, the only daily Cleveland Guardians podcast. And if you're here, we dive into all of the majors, the minors, and the draft for your Cleveland Guardians. So come on in, get your fix of daily Guardians discussion. We are glad to have you. Shout out to our everydayers. I know we got some new everydayers out there. We got a shout out, I believe Nicholas Grieg, who's a commenter, said he's a new everydayer. I know Brian is checking in as well. We know our good friend Chuck is listening on his way to work every day. Thank you all for listening every day wherever you get podcasts. As you know, we're free everywhere. And, of course, we're on YouTube. Would love if you're listening, too, because I personally have a face for audio. So if you're listening and instead of watching, that helps us out a ton, too. But we also love when you guys tune in on YouTube as well. All right, let's talk about the Guardians at the halfway point today. So the Guardians have played 82 games. Where do they compare to a year ago? Because, as we know, nobody wants to look back in 2023 because it was a bad year. But we can look back and we can say that things are much better this year. We can look at that and say, what a turnaround this was. So a year ago at this time, after 82 games, shield your children's ears and hold on to something tight, no sharp objects. A year ago at this time, the Guardians were had 54 home runs. They were batting 248, 313, 373 for a 90 WRC plus. That was pretty bad. So a year ago at this time, in terms of home runs, they were dead last in baseball. Flash forward to 2024, much better. Things are much better. 95 home runs. They are blowing away that pace. They're going to hit probably more home runs by the end of July than they hit all of last year. They're at a 108 WRC plus. They're slugging 410, and that puts them much higher in the rankings in terms of all offensive stats in Major League Baseball. So instead of being dead last this year in home runs, they are 10th. Coming into the year, Jeff and I just wanted this team to be average, just 15th in home runs. So they've kind of exceeded that. Although, to be fair, the Royals are 15th at 86. There's only 9 home runs separating the two, so it's not a lot. But still, that's a good amount for them to be at. They are 10th in baseball at 108 WRC+. If you want to look at just slugging percentage overall, they're 10th in baseball there as well at 410. This team has made dramatic improvements. And then runs scored. They're 5th this year at 407. A year ago at the halfway point, they had only scored, 328. Nope, that's not right. 328 runs a year ago at this time, and they are now at 407. So they've scored, over 80 more runs in this time. The offense, much better shape. So where do we grade the offense at this point? Because if we're basing it on a year ago, obviously it's an A+ compared to a year ago. It's a huge improvement, right? There's more power. Just more everything is good. The emergence of Steven Kwan makes this awesome. Jose Ramirez is on pace for 40 home runs. Josh Naylor's on pace for 40 home runs. David Fry wasn't awesome in June. I kind of wonder how much that had to do with the elbow. We'll see what happens in July as he gets healthier. I'm going to give this offense overall a B right now, because you do have 3 hitters in your lineup that you can kind of count on every day, right? You've got Quan, Jose, and we'll throw Naylor in there. Even though Naylor's had his ups and downs, he can be a little streaky. I'll say 3 hitters you can count on. And you might say, well, why are you giving them a B if they only have 3 hitters you can count on? They have other pieces in there. I think it's just based on who is getting hot at the time. Daniel Schneemann is still early on in proving himself at this point, but I think he's going to be fine. David Fry is mostly reliable, especially against lefties. You can count on that very often. I think Bo Naylor is starting to come around, but we still need to see more. When Will Brennan comes back, Will Brennan had a great June. I hope he can capitalize that. Maybe it's a C+. I don't know. Maybe it's a C+. It's definitely a huge improvement from a year ago. Maybe it's more like a C+ than a B, because Andres Jimenez needs to be more consistent. Tyler Freeman has been inconsistent. Brian Rocchio has not really been consistent either. And Bo Naylor was terrible offensively until the month of June, and we need to see if he can continue that. So there are spots in this lineup that it's not the deepest lineup. They're getting things done, and I don't want to say they're outperforming expectations, but I think they just need to, as I said before on the podcast, every game, every month, every week, there seems to be somebody else stepping up. When David Fry got cold, Josh Naylor came back. When Quan was out, Josh Naylor came back to life a little bit. Tyler Freeman's had his hot streaks a little bit. Everybody in this lineup has kind of had a hot streak here and there, which is typical. I don't know if all of them have really ever caught fire at one time necessarily. There's been some moments where they have, but I think this lineup could be a little bit deeper. We're going to get into that today about which spots we're holding on to, which ones we absolutely have to play out the rest of the year with, and which ones need to be moved into an upgrade mode. Again, shield your ears. Let's talk about the starting pitching. This is bad. As we gone from a year ago, things were pretty good, right? Gavin Williams was up a year ago. That was fun. He's coming back this week. He is going to start Wednesday. I believe I said the other day he was going to start against the Giants. It looks like it's going to be the White Sox now, which is good. I'll actually be there on the 3rd. So I'm looking forward to that. Starting pitching. A year ago at this time, this team had a 4.27 ERA. That was good for 14th in baseball. That's just starting pitching, by the way. Middle of the pack. And again, shield your ears. Stay away from sharp objects. This year, the ERA of the starters is 4.41. So not quite a half a run higher, but it's pretty rough. And it could be a lot worse in theory. You're looking at, you're looking in theory this year in fielding independent pitching, FIP 471. That is second to last in baseball in Colorado, which you never want to be anywhere near Colorado when it comes to pitching. I know old friend Cal Quantrill's having a good year, but if you're mentioning the same breath as Colorado when it comes to pitching, you are not in good shape. The Guardians have the in-season WAR is not a good thing to look at, but 2.3 WAR, and that's pretty much all Tanner Bybee and Ben Lively. That's all it is. So they need a great Gavin Williams. I'm going to give this a D. Pretty simple. It's a D. It's bad. You've got Bybee, who's been the most consistent starter. Lively has given you more than you could have hoped for, I think. And everybody else has just been, I'd roll the dice almost every time out. And a lot of times you're pretty much not landing on roulette or whatever gambling preference you prefer. It's all bad. It's all bad. We get skipped the bullpen. It's an A. We know it's an A. This is the best bullpen in baseball. Although I was curious. I looked back where they were at the halfway point a year ago. This bullpen, man, a year ago, coming into the year, you had Emmanuel Clase and Trevor Stephan had both struggled. You were finding some other pieces. Sam Hentges was out for a while. A year ago, this bullpen was still a 3.02 ERA. The FIP was 3.85, so it was 9th. So this bullpen a year ago was still actually pretty good. I think last year we thought the bullpen was pretty terrible. It was actually decent. The second half wasn't so good, but the first half was pretty good. That kind of held them together for a little bit. This year, obviously, it's the best in baseball. I think the bullpen is the main reason this team is so good, because anytime they're getting a lead, they are pretty much holding it down. And that's a dangerous thing. That can cover up a lot of warts. And we'll get into what pieces need to be fixed for that. As far as management and roster management goes, this has been a great year for the Guardians. They've gotten looks at a lot of different players. Kyle Manzardo has been up. They gave a shot to Estevan Florial. There were people on Twitter the other day complaining about not giving Davison De Los Santos a shot. I don't agree with that. I think he would have been very hard to hold on this roster. I don't disagree with letting him go. Rocchio's playing every day. They're trying to find playing time for Arias. They got creative. They moved Tyler Freeman to center field to get him in the lineup more. They moved on from Miles Straw, which they needed to do, even though Freeman's offense has been comparable to Miles Straw overall and less defense. David Fry has been utilized excellently. You're getting Noel up here now. You had Rodriguez up for a little bit. I know not long, but you're getting looks at some players. Maybe Valera needs to be one of them. They've done a great job cycling through the bullpen, too, to be honest. I mean, you've had Pedro Avila has been a good find for them in a mop-up role, and he's pitched really good innings. They've had to shuffle up a couple guys up and down. Curry hasn't been the greatest for him this year, but they got Hunter Gaddis into a setup role. He's been awesome. Cade Smith has emerged. Tim Herron has gotten better. All those guys, especially Smith and Gaddis, had control issues, and Herron to a point, not Gaddis so much, but Herron and Smith were not big strike throwers in the minors, and they've improved that at the major league level this year, which has been good to see. Credit to them and credit to Carl Willis as well. And then Scott Barlow has been a good find for them. I think that was a nice upgrade over Aniel De Los Santos. Angel, Angel Martinez got a shot at one point earlier. I don't know if he'll be back or not, but he did. So they've done a good job, and they've pulled a lot of the right levers. I like the bullpen usage. I mean, Stephen Vogt has been forced into using the bullpen a lot. I think he's done a good job. Like, here's a good example. The other game against Kansas City on Sunday, Sam Hentges got pulled after 3 batters. He only faced 3 batters. He threw 16 pitches on Saturday. So it could have been worse, right? He could have faced more batters, and you could have left him in there to finish the inning. But he only faced 3 batters. He's been doing a good job of pulling guys out early and not letting their pitch counts go up, so they're not burned out for the next day, and you can use them again, and they're not burned out long term. He's been able to manage their workloads. Like Emmanuel Clase has not been throwing a lot of pitches. These guys are not throwing a lot of pitches in their outings. They're being efficient. He's not leaving them in there to finish innings. If they face 4 batters, they take them out because they don't want them to run up a 20 or 30 pitch count in an inning, so they're not burned out for a day. And those pitches really add up. They're high stress pitches. So easy A for Vogt. I think the roster construction has been pretty good this year for the most part of getting young players in. So we'll talk about some of those spots in the next segment. We'll talk about which spots are we holding, which spots are we upgrading, or which spots we'd like to upgrade if there is a possibility to upgrade. We're also going to talk about trade chips. I've got my prospects ranked in the tiers in terms of what they're going to bring back and what you're kind of expecting if you put these names into conversation. So we'll get into that on today's Locked On Guardians. Sports are not sporting as much as we'd like. There's not a lot of sports going on. There is the Olympics, though. That's interesting. I'm not a big person on the Olympics every year. I'll watch some events, but some I won't. Good time to bet on those. And if you're into betting on other things like moves and transactions, maybe that's the thing you want to look into. We're still ways away from college football, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All you got to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime in the mood. Definitely curious to see what they have lined up as far as the Home Run Derby. They've changed the format on that. That'll be interesting to look at. The All-Star game, I know it's an exhibition game, and I know Jeff hates it, but guess what? I love the All-Star game. I will definitely be betting on the All-Star game because I love it. It's one of my favorite events of the year. I love seeing the best players on the field at the same time, and I love being able to bet on what these guys can do. And this summer, especially coming up for the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game, if you're anything like me, FanDuel is hooking up all of you customers with a boost or bonus daily. So there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockdown and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And you already know by now to tune in, if you haven't heard before, to Locked On Sports Today. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed every day to bring you the biggest stories, not all the screaming you hear on other networks. And it's also got hosts that know your team the most. So you're getting good opinions from people who are on the ground, who know your team. They're going to bring you what you need to hear. They bring a canvas analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we cover your team every single day. All right, let's talk about trade chips and tiers. Let's talk about which spots are we holding. Just looking at the roster right now. We know that third base is a lock. We don't have to go there. We know that left field is a lock. We don't have to go there. Catcher, they're not going to. I've seen some rumors out there about Elias Diaz. I don't buy that. I don't think this team's trading for a catcher. You got Fry who can move around. I like the idea of Fry again as a third catcher, not necessarily a catcher, but a fielder who can catch and play multiple positions. So there is that. I think any of the two outfield spots right now are up for grabs. I know people like Daniel Schneemann. I like what he's done so far, but I think if you can find a hitter that can move into that spot, whether it's a center fielder or a right fielder, I think you do it. I don't think Daniel Schneemann should stop you from making an upgrade there. The real question, I think, long term is, do you trade for somebody that's a rental, or are you looking to upgrade long term? Because I think it's going to be costly. I don't think there's going to be a lot of long term pieces out there. I think that's something you do in the off season. I just don't see a lot of players on the market. They're going to be long term upgrades. Like there's no, Ubaldo Jimenez is what Cleveland did one year. He was a long term upgrade for the rotation. Andrew Miller was a long term upgrade in the bullpen. I probably more Jay Bruce's, probably more things like that. And that's probably a good thing for Cleveland, even though that's going to make the prices more expensive. That's probably the range they want to play. And I don't think they're really looking like, if everybody for a couple of years wanted to get Brian Reynolds, right? Like those sorts of pieces, I don't think are going to exist in the July trading deadline. Shortstop, I don't think you're going to upgrade there. They've just been trying too long to figure out what they're doing in this position. They've been trying to figure out if Brian Rocchio is it. Gabriel Arias is still around, hasn't played shortstop as much. You've got Angel Martinez. You've got, Jose Tena, who I don't think is a real threat to that position at this point. You've got a lot of guys. You've got to figure out, you've invested this much time. You've got to figure out if one of them is the guy. I just don't see them upgrading shortstop. I don't. DH is definitely a spot they should go for. That makes it easy because then you're not necessarily locked into one position. So I think outfield makes the most sense for them. Unfortunately for Tyler Freeman, I think at this point, Schneemann is one thing, Brennan's one thing. Maybe you find a complement right-handed to them, ideally. If Noel or Rodriguez isn't it. Right now we're looking at Noel, and I'm going to have a comment on him in a second. But unfortunately for Freeman, it's only 287 plate appearances. He had 168 a year ago, but it's super hard to buy into what his performance was a year ago because he was playing only on Sundays. I don't understand what that whole role was for him. And he's had his good spots this year. He's increased his power a little bit. The walks are up, which is great. He's pulling the ball more than he was a year ago a little bit. He's hitting the ball in the air a little more. Those are all good things. And if you want to keep running him out there, I'm not saying, he can't be the guy. I'm not saying that he doesn't, you need to move on from him and this isn't it. But if you have an opportunity now to go out there and upgrade and maybe leave Freeman as a fourth outfielder or a utility guy, I think you do it. His best month this year is a 100 WRC plus. There was no power that month. It was a 109 ISO, 330 on base. That's his best month. I just think that that's a spot you can upgrade. Center field is going to be a hard spot to upgrade, but I think if you can do it, or worst case scenario, you put him in. He doesn't really have big splits against either side. He's a below average hitter against both sides of the plate, so you can't even platoon him against lefties. Actually, this year he's worse against left-handers than he is right-handers in terms of average, which is hard to believe. He's walking more, but that's about it. And he's slugging a little more. But maybe you move a Will Brennan to center when he gets healthy. They've put Daniel Schneemann in center. Freeman has been a good enough defender. I wouldn't necessarily say that, if you put Brennan in center and if you like Tyler Freeman in center a little more, you can make him a defensive replacement if that's the case. So I wouldn't even say you have to move on from him completely. But I think if there's an offensive upgrade out there, that's a rental. Again, I think center field's going to be hard to find. But if you move Will Brennan there and you find a right fielder, Taylor Ward, which is, kind of a long-term upgrade, you can easily replace him defensively or DH Taylor Ward if you need to, things like that. So I don't think those guys can stand in your way of acquiring a piece at this time if it exists. If that trade's out there, I don't think you can look at Tyler Freeman and say, we have to have him in the lineup in the playoffs or the rest of the year. That's our best version. If there's a better hitter out there, I think you have to go for it. Provided the price is right there. And I think it is outfield. I think we know starting pitching is a must-have. But if we're being honest with the starting pitching staff, your pitching staff is going to be Bivey, Williams, Lively, and then you're going to figure out if Allen, you can figure it out with Allen. I still think the best version of this team, and the Guardians said it themselves, is with McKenzie on this team. So they've got to fix McKenzie. I would not be at all shocked if he comes back as a part of this rotation in the second half. It seems unlikely, but I think that's the best version of this team. Because I said on yesterday's show, if you didn't listen, they're not going to trade for a better of that caliber. Okay. They're going to get a mid-rotation guy, and they're not going to find a pitcher that has that upside. I know some people were saying, well, I think you're putting too much expectations on Gavin Williams. You're putting too high expectations on what Tristan McKenzie can do. And maybe I am, maybe people are, but what their ceiling is, what they're capable of. I know we're saying ceiling like that's a guaranteed thing with injury issues and missed time and all that kind of stuff. But that's the biggest ceiling you're going to get. You're not going to trade for someone equal to that ceiling. That's what I'm saying. And I understand that's a lot of pressure on those guys, but Gavin Williams is going to be the biggest acquisition you make, whether he's good or not. Like, they're not going to go out and make that sort of deal. So he has to be, again, he doesn't have to be a whole lot better than McKenzie. It's not like there was a high bar to clear in the first place, but I think he's the best you're going to get. Unfortunately, whether you like that or not, there's Matt Boyd, which again, I keep saying Matt Boyd has found money. Can't count on that. And then I still think the bullpen is a good place to go. If you're looking over at the bullpen, I mean, obviously, like, you have your mainstays, right? You have Clase, Gaddis, Smith, Henches, Heron, Barlow. That's your big six. There's room to go get another guy. There is. I know Nick Sandlin's coming back. We'll see. And in the playoffs, maybe you can move someone from the rotation of the bullpen, but I don't know if that's a great idea. Because those guys you're moving in the bullpen are not that great. Like, I don't like the idea of McKenzie in the bullpen. I don't like the idea of Allen or Carrasco. Maybe. He's the only one I can think of, and we'll see what happens with Matt Boyd. But if there's a reliever out there you can go get, I think that makes a ton of sense too, because it's going to be hard to upgrade your rotation. So I keep saying this, but a reliever can really help you shorten the games. You're not facing lineups 3 times through the order. So let me know which spots you think make sense for an upgrade and which spots you are definitely holding for next year. Again, for me, I think it's either center field or right field and, DH. I think everything else is kind of set. You're not going to upgrade at shortstop, first base, obviously, second, third, left. I think all those spots are locked in. It is outfield or DH. So that kind of narrows it down. Again, you can go out and get a hitter who plays any position and DH them if you have to. But those are the spots I think that wind up making the most sense for Cleveland. All right. I kind of made my prospects in the trade chip tiers. I'll tell you which guys are in the first tier, which ones you can expect them to bring back bigger pieces. Got those ranked. I'll quickly talk about potential futures game participants. The coaching staff is out for that game for the Rangers in Texas. And then I'll quickly mention the latest mock from Baseball America, all coming up on today's Locked On Guardians. Before I do that, we have to talk about our friends at Prize Picks. They are the #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. They are the best for a reason. And you can also turn your money up into 100 times on Prize Picks. All you got to do is make as little as 4 correct picks, and you can take $10 and turn that into 1,000. And of course, you can also get promotions, and Prize Picks has you covered all week long with different incentives. So they'll lower player stats projections on Tuesday to help your lineup hit. So that's coming up here. Guardians and White Sox, they're going to lower some projections. You pick over, you're going to turn that money into 100 times. And then you get your entry fees back on Friday if you have a losing lineup. So go out and play on Friday as well and create a lineup. And if you have a losing lineup, you can get your entry fee back depending on the kind of game you're playing here. So all you got to do is go in there and pick some stats, more or less, on some lines here. Guardians and White Sox, again, Tuesday is Chris Flexen and Carlos Carrasco. I think the Guardians are going to hit Chris Flexen. I really do. So let's take a look at some batter scores. I would say Jose Ramirez is a good bet to go over on his batter game score. And I would say as well, maybe Daniel Schneemann. I think Schneemann can hit Chris Flexen. Stephen Kwan, always a good bet as well. And I don't know, as much as I want to say Carrasco should dominate the Guardian or the White Sox lineup, I would probably on the pitching line there. If any of this sounds good to you, download the Prize Picks app today and pick less on some stats. Use our code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy. And one of the things we don't like to talk about, but as adults, we have to. It is tax season. And here at Locked On Guardians, we always pride ourselves on getting you the latest news on your team in the offseason, the draft, and spring training or the playoffs. And I love spring training year-round, just like tax collection season. Just because the season's over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. I have to file with Rita here in Ohio all the time, and that is a pain. I need help with that. Let the Tax Network USA professionals do that for you as well. Over 14 years of experience and A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters, require planning like I do, or you finally hit that parlay this season and help filing correctly, 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. Be sure to mention Locked On Guardians at checkout, and you'll also receive a $250 discount off of their services. Tuesday night, Guardians back in action against the White Sox. It is coming your way at 6:40 all week long, at least on Tuesday. Just check your Sirius XM app, search Guardians to find the hometown broadcast wherever you are. All right, so the thing we teased the most today, obviously, was the trade ship tiers. Here's what I broke it down to. I've got kind of 4 tiers. I didn't really go into others. Got a lot of players here, but I broke it down in terms of value and what you're expecting back if you include these players. So in tier 1, I'm a little down on Chase DeLauter because of the injuries. I have a lot of concerns. And if I'm being honest, I would trade him. And I'm not saying do it for Taylor Ward or whatever, but let's use Luis Robert. Okay. Luis Robert is not, the Guardians aren't trading for Luis Robert. Let's just be honest about that. It's not happening. But let's just say hypothetically they are for whatever reason. Chase DeLauter is a guy you would put in that trade, right? That's the player you would do it for. There's really nobody else out there I can think of that really fits into that tier, right? Like controllable players, like even Bo Bichette. I don't think that makes sense for Cleveland. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think he's not even controlled enough to do that. So I think Chase DeLauter, even though I'm down on him right now, and I would trade him if you can go get a long-term outfielder for him, I would do it. Cal Manzardo, I think, is a guy that is in the first tier as well. So these are all guys that I think you would lead a package with. This is a guy who, if you're making a big trade, this is the guy that can headline your trade. And as down as I am on DeLauter, he can headline a trade, I think. I think Manzardo can. He did it a year ago. We'll see what happens there. Ralphie Velasquez, for me, is the last headliner in this trade. He's a top 100 prospect universally for the most part. I think Fangraphs is the only place that's not as high on him, but I think he's the guy that could headline a trade for you in terms of a big return. Tier 2, the guys I have in tier 2, so these are guys that, maybe are in the Taylor Ward conversation or something like that. A nice piece, a complimentary piece, not necessarily a blockbuster, but they can headline a trade for a guy that is A, maybe controllable, but B, isn't like a huge name. That's just a nice fit for your team. So I think Jason Chourio is probably in that conversation right now. I don't think he's ready to headline, a big splash. Like, again, hypothetical Luis Robert. I don't think Chourio can headline that, but I think Chourio could be a big guy in a Taylor Ward type deal. Juan Brito, Angel Martinez, Angel Henao, or I think it's Angel. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, but I think those guys are in that tier 2 conversation. Jonathan Rodriguez. I don't think they're going to trade Brian Rocchio, but I threw him in there anyway. George Valera is a tier 2 guy for me. Giankenzo Noel is a tier 2 guy for me. And I think Andrew Walters. I don't know if they're going to trade Andrew Walters, but he's in the second tier for me. So these are all guys you can, and I don't think Walters, maybe I should put him in tier 3 because I don't think he can headline, but these are your guys that might be headliners for a lesser trade, for going after like a Yusei Kikuchi. Maybe that's what you give up for a Yusei Kikuchi, or just kind of looking around. I don't know what the Cubs have. It's supposedly the Cubs are open for business. I don't think that, the Rays might be moving some guys. Who knows? But I think those are your tier 2 guys. You're expecting maybe someone controllable back, or if it's a rental, maybe it's a 1-for-1 and you're not giving up a ton for a rental, even though rental prices will be high. I would say all those guys are in that conversation. Tier 3 to me, these are guys that you're going to have to include as a secondary piece no matter what, whether it's a bigger trade or if it's a complementary piece like a bullpen piece. I think you have to conclude them. Maybe they're 1-for-1. Tier 3 for me is Jose Tena. I don't think he has a whole lot of value, so to me, he's a secondary piece. Gabriel Arias is a secondary piece at this point. Welvin Francisca, too far down the list in terms of prospects and proving it, so I don't think he has a ton of value. Alex Clemmy, not a lot of value. If you're going to make a big trade, you can include him. I wouldn't include him in a small trade, a 1-for-1 like a Kikuchi, but he's a guy who is going to have to be a secondary piece. He's not a headliner. Joey Cantillo, I was much higher on him coming to the year. The strike throwing issues are a big issue. The health issues are a big issue. Parker Messick to me is a secondary piece. Austin Peterson, I think you can get somebody to buy in on. Doug Nikhazy, Ryan Webb, maybe Matt Wilkinson. All those guys to me, if you're going out, and again, go back to Taylor Ward, all those guys to me are your secondary pieces in a Taylor Ward deal. I think you're combining somebody I mentioned in the second piece, like a Jason Churio and a Parker Messick. To me, that's part of a Taylor Ward thing right there in that tier of things. And then tier 4, kind of lottery tickets. I've got Khalil Watson in there. Maybe someone wants to buy on the upside. He's been really good since he got here, but he's not hitting a ton. There's power. I still like Diane Frias. I think someone might take a chance there. Someone like Rafael Ramirez could make some sense there. But guys of those tiers, those are all lottery tickets. Those are guys you can throw in. I don't want to say throw in, but they're the 4th piece in a trade. They're a secondary piece. They're lottery tickets for some other team. If you're making a deal and maybe they work out, maybe they don't, maybe that gets the deal across the finish line, adding in a lottery ticket type player at the end. So that's where I'm at on my trade tiers. I will trade anybody. I know people have asked me, who would you trade? Who would you not trade? There's nobody I wouldn't trade because it depends on what you're getting back. Again, I don't think there's an outfielder out there that's going to make sense for the Guardians other than Taylor Ward is the biggest fit for them in terms of what's going to be on the block, maybe. And I don't think I would put Chase DeLauder in there. But again, if there was like a Kyle Tucker, again, Luis Robert, like I would put DeLauder in that trade. But I don't think that's happening. But there's nobody I wouldn't trade. I would trade everybody. The guys I think most likely to be traded are Juan Brito, Angel Martinez, Angel Janao. I think all those guys, Valera, Noel, I think they're all likely to be traded if they need to find. Jose Tena is in that conversation. All those guys to me are likely to be traded if they're going to make a move here. As far as futures game participants, didn't have enough time to get to that today, unfortunately. The latest mock from Baseball America had J.J. Weatherholt again and Slade Caldwell. They're staying strong with that. I think it's 50-50. We'll see what happens. We're hoping to talk more draft later in the week and next week as well. So stick around for that. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. Appreciate it. We could use a new review on iTunes. I know someone had one up there recently, B. Tucci. Thank you for that. Please go ahead and leave us another one if you can. And please tune in again tomorrow. We'll have more to talk about in the White Sox series. We'll get into more futures game stuff. Maybe I'll dig into the mock a little bit more. And I know I got some questions out there on Twitter I have to get to. So thank you all for being an everydayer, listening wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Justin Ladder. This has been Locked On Guardians. Go, Guardians, go. Let's beat the White Sox. Rebound.